All glories to Mother Ratasha. All glories to the religion of love. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to our Supreme Lord. O Lord God, please help us live out these teachings, be an example of love in the world. Jai. All right, so today we are continuing from the promise of God. 6 simple steps to enlightenment. What is the need now of God? Said a scientist to the master. Have you not heard of the Big Bang Theory, whereby it was an explosion, not God, by which the universe was created? And he asked that she might answer on this, and so she did, telling of a certain man who was gifted with an exquisite model of the universe fashioned in silver. And so it happened that one day his friend, a scientist and proponent of the Big Bang Theory, came to visit, and seeing the silver model of the universe, and marveling at its beauty, the perfect proportions done to scale, asked of the man, "Who has created this?" "I don't know," replied the man. "There was a big bang and there it was." "It is said," persisted the scientist to the master, "that God created man. But now science can also create a man. What would you say to that?" "There was a scientist," she answered him, "much like yourself, who said to a holy man, as you have said, 'There is no need of God, for I now can create a man.'" "Go ahead," said the holy man. The scientists then began to collect the different chemicals, the DNA. Said the holy man. "Get your own materials." "Master," asked a mother with a child upon her lap, "I am curious as to what God looks like, for it is written in Scripture that we are made in the image of God." But before the master could answer, another answered for her. "No," said a lawyer, "it is not that we are made in the image of God, but that we have made God in the image of man." And to the surprise of all, the master replied, "What both have said is true." Then to the mother she said, "Our bodies do look like God's, for God is a person. But they are not like God's, for our bodies, being material, are subject to age, decay, and death, while the form of God, being purely spiritual, is therefore eternal." "How can you say God is a person with a body which appears to look like ours?" asked a scholar of the master. "I have long studied the ancient scriptures of the East, and in one it clearly says, 'God has no eyes, no ears, and no mouth.'" "Yes," she answered him, "it is said as you say. The meaning is that God has no material eyes, ears, or mouth." "Do not think God, who created the eye, cannot see, who created the mouth cannot speak, who created the ear cannot hear." And to the lawyer who said, "We have created God in the image of man," she said, "The God man has made in his own image is a judgmental, vengeful, punishing God, made more to be feared than loved." Okay, stop there. "What is the need now of God?" says a scientist. And he goes on to explain the Big Bang Theory. And funny, we actually covered this a couple weeks ago in class. And this story is actually of Einstein, who was gifted this model of the universe or of the solar system, and the scientists who came said, "Ooh, who made this?" And he goes, "Bam! I don't know. Big bang, bang happened. There it was." Being sarcastic, and we went over this already, so I won't repeat myself. But everything has a cause, has an origin. There is a creator to all in this world. And God is that supreme cause, the supreme creator. And the Big Bang Theory is just that. It's a theory, a false theory. There was no Big Bang. But the scientists persisted that now science can create a man. What do you say to that? So, science and religion, right? They've always seemed to have been opposed to each other. But actually now, in quantum physics, science is starting to catch up to what spiritual people have always known. That consciousness affects all things. They are not so opposed as they used to be. So what is science? Science is man's means of making sense of the natural, observable phenomenon in this world. Right? Being able to explain things, how things happen, what happens, why they happen, and also trying to create new things through science. And science isn't inherently evil, as some so-called religionists, so to say, and neither is religion evil, as many so-called scientists say. There's good to be found everywhere. Everything depends on your consciousness, the use made of things. For example, science has enabled all of us to be together right now. This computer, these phones, the internet, all these devices, all these airways, recording, all of this is fabulous science, which allows us to be in the service of the Lord in a way that we wouldn't have been able to. If all of us were so far apart, there's no way we would be able to be in touch right now to have class. I mean, we have Yeti in Australia, we have Aaron in India, we have Meet in another state in this country, and yet here we're all together live. Wonderful science, used in the service of God. Of course, some science doesn't really have a useful service for God. The atomic bomb being a prime example, just made to destroy, made just to cause suffering. So not all science is good. But as is taught in the religion of love, a thing is neither good nor bad, but the use made of it. A knife in the hands of a surgeon may save your life. A knife in the hands of a murderer may take your life. So it's not the things which are good or bad, but the use made of them. And science and all of the wonderful inventions of man, if in the right hands and devotee hands, may be used in service to the Lord for His pleasure. And whatever is not useful, they won't use, they won't take up. But they're not necessarily they don't have to be opposed to one another. What is religion? Religion is the relinking process and practices by which we come again to God. And a holy person or devotees of God, they know that behind all of the natural phenomena in this world is the will of God. And science is catching up by explaining, how God's will enacts in this world. Yet many, in puffed up arrogance, who deny the existence of God, think by their limited mental faculties that they can figure out the origin of everything, that they can surmise how all things came to be, such as this Big Bang Theory. They can't bring themselves to surrender to the supremacy of God. So they come up with some theory that, no, God didn't create anything. There was some big explosion. Sure. Yeah. Same type of people that make the atomic bomb, right? They love their explosions. Big bang. Chemical reactions. All chemicals, right? No, this is atheism. This is faithless, godless arrogance, really. But it doesn't mean that all scientists are faithless or atheistic. No. But this is where this mentality comes from. This pridefulness. This idea that you don't want anything to be superior than yourself. You want to be the top dog. You want to be the one who is honored, revered. You want to figure everything out by yourself because you think you're all that in a bag of chips. This is pride. And a little side note on a lesson of pride. If you're familiar with the scriptures, the story of Lucifer, Lucifer actually means light bearer. And he was one of the top angels in the spiritual world. And when God created man, God told all the angels to bow down before man. All did so, except Lucifer. He says, man is made of mud. I am made of fire. Why should I bow? And so he refused God's wish, and so fell down. Lucifer, or Iblis, as he's called in the Quran, was so proud. He felt superior. He didn't realize that when we bow down, we benefit. Paying our obeisances drops dirt. So, in spiritual life, we work from the inside out. But we can also work from the outside in. It's all cleaning. The way we work with the mind is to order it. And the outside things we do will also affect us inside. For example, offering obeisances. May not have the feeling to do so. And remember the story of the master. He tells the disciple, do it, then you get the feeling. So, and it's true. Outside can affect the inside. The inside can affect the outside. So this is actually a science. What we do in spiritual life, this process, it is a science. It's the science of self-realization. And as we do these things, hearing, chanting, remembering, this process leads to different signs manifesting. And the devotee comes to know himself, for he must be able to see, to come clean. And just like in science, if you put certain chemicals together, you'll be able to witness a predictable reaction. Same with spiritual life. If you chant the holy names, you hear the word of God, you associate with devotees, build your desire for God and the spiritual eternal, there will be a reaction. There will be an effect. And you'll be able to observe what those reactions or the signs that change is happening. And these signs are made clear in the scriptures what these are. So, science. And I'd like to share something. This is something from one of the purports of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He says that actually the most important science to know is the science of getting out of the clutches of material existence. Anyone who knows this science must be considered the greatest learned person. Anyone who knows the temporary situation of this material world and is expert in achieving a permanent situation in the spiritual world, who knows that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is beyond the jurisdiction of our experimental knowledge, is understood to be the most learned scholar. So, the greatest scientist, the greatest learned person, truly is the surrendered devotee of God. And there are no mysteries for the devotee of God. We may not be able to explain the minutiae on an atomic level, okay, this thing happened, that thing happened, but the great picture of God's will working in this world becomes clear, becomes manifest, realized within the heart of the devotee, the more they purify. For remember, the three qualities of the spirit soul, our natural state of being, are eternality, ecstatic bliss, and full conscious knowledge. All knowledge exists already in us. It is of us. So the greatest scientist, the greatest wise man, the greatest learned person is one who, as Prabhupada said, is trying to make a permanent solution to this cycle of birth and death, of suffering, and returning home to our original, eternal, spiritual abode and the loving service of God. And he says, science can now create a man. What would you say to that? And there's the test between the holy man and the scientist. And the holy man says, okay, go ahead. And the scientists start gathering different chemicals, different elements, minerals, DNA. And the holy man butts in, get your own materials. Because all of these are God's materials, which is true. If you really want to know in a little more detail about the creation of the material universe, the Srimad Bhagavatam, fabulous, voluminous scripture, which actually means the supreme science of Godhead, goes in depth into the material creation, including all the elements and their order of being created, from the ether to the air, to fire, to water, to earth, all these different material elements and the subtle elements of the mind, intelligence, false ego, the nature, even the dimensions, the size of this universe, the amount of universes within the entire material creation, the coverings of the universe, the order in which everything is manifested by God's will, all of that is explained in detail in Srimad Bhagavatam. No mysteries there. For one who has realized Bhagavatam, there are no mysteries. Everything becomes clear. It's quite amazing. And we mentioned the other day on things that are in the revealed scriptures that could not be known by man and so were revealed by God. Like earth being round in the Quran, the Buddha's coming, is Advent foretold in Bhagavatam. Well, the Bhagavatam and many other scriptures also have many, many, many more things. One of which would be atoms. Actual atoms with protons, neutrons, electrons. These are actually explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Atoms and subatomic particles, other planets, planetary systems. Even the gestation and growth of the fetus within the womb, with detail, tells you at which stage the fingers develop, which stage the eyes develop. It can tell with accuracy what are all the stages of growth of the fetus. So all of this, and so many more things, God has revealed. So, I've said before, all these scientists trying to understand what is the God particle, well, if they but surrender to God, all their answers will be solved. And more importantly, so will the great dilemma of suffering and death. That will be solved. First, we have to, like Lucifer needs, get past our pride. And when we have a very puffed up idea of ourselves, we think we're so wonderful, we think we're so smart, we're so important, we're big muckety mucks. We don't have any humility. And without humility, we cannot be emptied and make room for God, because our hearts fill with all this worldly stuff and all of this puffed up false conception of the self. Where is the room for God? So we first have to come to humility. And my goodness, even with all the knowledge of the Bhagavatam, all the Vedic scriptures, all the other scriptures that God has revealed, still it's not even a spark of knowledge that exists and can be known. We know so very little. And if that doesn't humble you, if you're so puffed up with all the things you think you know, oh, my goodness. Eat some soul food, associate with devotees, chant the holy names. God help you. So, and now moving on to another topic. This woman asks the master, Mother Ratasha, what does God look like? Because it's said that we are made in the image of God. And this guy butts in saying, no, God is made in our image. So, and the master says both are true. And first off, she clarifies that God is a person. God is a person. He is the supreme person. And he has his own personality, just like we do. But our bodies are not like God's body. We are in material bodies at present. We're spirit souls, that's who we are, but at present we are embodied in this material world with these material forms, which are limited and temporary. So, even though the spirit soul gives consciousness and life to the body, the soul itself does not actually act in this world. It's the body and the senses that are acting. Like a marionette, a puppet with strings moving around. The soul itself is not actually touching and doing anything. And unless we are spiritually realized, purified in the mind, it's the mind that's actually pulling all the strings, the mind and senses, which are still material. But God is a person, and his body, his personal form, is such Chit Ananda Vigraha, eternal bliss and knowledge, just like our original spiritual form when we're back home in the spiritual world, where there is no decay, there is no death. Everything is purely spiritual. There is no material energy or material contamination or illusion or lamentation in God's eternal kingdom. But some people get riled up about that. This guy says, how can you say God is a person with a body that appears like ours? I have studied the ancient scriptures of the East, and in one it clearly says God has no eyes, no ears, and no mouth. Yes, it does say that. I believe they're quoting here the Ishopanishad. Also the Quran, I believe, says the same. But the meaning of that is not to say God doesn't actually have ears, eyes, and a mouth. It's that God has no material eyes, ears, or mouth, no material body. So most people, not most, I would say many people, I should say, they have an impersonal conception of God. That God doesn't have any form at all. By saying no ears, no eyes, no mouth, it means to say that, God has no form. People come to assume. The impersonal aspect of God or as is said in Bhagavad Gita, the Brahmajyoti, or the Holy Ghost, etc. You can't have a loving relationship with power. No. So the personal aspect of God is not taught in the Abrahamical religions because people would think God is like me. And that would be incorrect. We're not on the same level as God. We're one in quality, but not the same in quantity. Nor does God have a material form like we are experiencing now. So it wasn't taught in the Abrahamical scriptures, lest people would be confused by misinterpreting it in the wrong way. But they all say, all the scriptures, there is one God. And he also has unlimited names. And a name refers to a person. A person has a name, personality. So God has person and impersonal aspects. So most books talk about the formless aspect of God. And remember, God has no material form, so people think, however, that form means material. So something has a form and has to be material. They have no conception that spiritual energy also has form because they have no conception of the spiritual nature at all. So it's misunderstood. God should not be thought of having form that's material like a human body. No. And people would ask if God is male, because you even hear me say, he, him, his, the Lord. I also refer to God as he. But that would limit God. God is unlimited. As we covered before in class, God is male and female. God has form and is formless. God is experience and the taste you most desire. So you cannot limit God. God is all things and all things are in God. And his personality supremely cannot be understood or conceived of by our limited and material mind. But to note that God is so beautiful that to see him for 1 second, you'd fall in love with him. God is so beautiful. The greatest qualities, the greatest of all things, his mercy, compassion, his love. God really is the greatest. God is great. But that's a little different conception than the lawyer is saying, who says we have created God in the image of man. And the master says the God that man has made in his own image is a judgmental, vengeful, punishing God, made more to be feared than loved. And this false conception that is taught in religion is trying to make God like us. For we, in our conditioned state, in our ignorance, we are quite judgmental of one another. We're quite vengeful and violent. We like to punish, we like to blame. And so we made God appear like us in the teachings of religions. But that's not true. God is all loving, and everything God does is for our benefit. And yes, there are examples where the Lord doth smite some people. But we explained before that even that is for their good, out of love. Everything God does is out of love, and all things God does is for the benefit of all. God made more to be feared than loved. In the Bible, when they were translating it, there was a word, and it could have gone multiple ways of how to translate it. They could have gone with awe, reverence, or fear. So we do things in the awe of God, in the reverence of God, in the fear of God. Oh yeah, I like that one. That's what the worldly-minded men show us. Let's stick with fear. But one scholar, I believe a Islamic scholar, he said, more accurately, you could say, the fear is really the fear of disappointing God, the fear of displeasing Him. For the devotee of God is always aiming to please the Lord in love. So if there is any fear, it's fear that He might be displeased with our service. And that, too, is just a sentiment of love. So I'll stop there. Record. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? It was raining just before class started, and I was picking it up in the microphone. Unfortunately, it stopped pretty much when class started, so you didn't hear the nice pitter-patter of rainfall in the background. Would have been a nice soothing ambiance. So you're just stuck with my voice. Nope. You all good? You're good too? No questions about science or God being a person, which we're going to go into more tomorrow, or sorry, next week I mean to say, and the last couple pages of this book. My wife's trying to cook something up. Her eyes like this.
I have a question.
Yes, brother.
Yeah, so I know you should be using science and these things for God, but a lot of science is researching something that looks like it has no use, or it seems like it has no purpose. Like one guy had a knot theory. He was just figuring out theories about knots, and then it helped a ton with string theory and actual physics. So there's a lot of stuff in science seems pointless, but then it'll eventually turn out to be something that vastly improves people's quality of life, and that could in turn be used for devotional service. So I was wondering, what about that?
Well, as I said in the Religion of Love book, there is no greater wisdom than love of God. All else is foolishness. So where does knowledge, science, our desires, our activities, where are they leading us? Are they leading us simply to satisfy our own senses, fulfill our own worldly desires, or are they aimed towards liberating us from material desires, on attaching us to the Lord's service, and freeing us from this world altogether, for pleasing God's senses? Everything that can be dovetailed in the Lord's service may be accepted. In fact, it would be offensive and wrong thinking to reject anything that can be used in God's service by saying, oh, this is science, or oh, this is material, this is that. Take, for example, the Amish. The Amish are a community in the Americas, and they don't believe in technology. They believe in doing things old school. Churning the butter by hand, plowing the fields by bullock cart, doing everything old school. I don't even think they even have electricity. I don't think so. They definitely don't have cars. They have, horse and buggies. So they believe that science and these material advancements are wicked and deter one from living a holy or righteous life. I'm not 100% on their philosophy, but this is more or less the gist. If any of you guys know, correct me. So they reject many things, considering them to be materialistic or, wicked. But as I explained before, how we are using technology right now, presently, in loving service. So anything that can be used in God's service can be accepted by a devotee of God. And if it's not useful, the devotee doesn't have to have aversion to it. When you have aversion to something, that means you have hate for it. You're judging, you hate it, you have a lot of negative feelings towards something, animosity towards it. You don't have to. You don't have to do it. You can avoid something if it's not beneficial. You don't have to be averse to it. For some folks, okay, fine. If it's not necessary in your service to God to take up technology, that's fine. Not everyone serves the Lord in the same way. Depends on one's spiritual master. For the spiritual master, after initiation, will instruct the disciples, the devotees, in ways in which they can serve that engages them in their natural propensities, their natural interests, finds ways to dovetail the devotees' inclinations and tendencies and abilities and characteristics in loving service. Guide everything in that way. So when you mention, knot theory, string theory, this theory, that theory, all these different components to different things in the realms of science, how one thing might not make sense, as you mentioned, but then it led to some other advancement. And I know mathematics, that's also very much true, which I think that's also kind of what you're pointing at, because much of physics is math. But still, what is the goal? What is it all for? I mean, yes, we can improve the comforts and status of life, quality of life with good medicine, good facilities, technology for purifying water so we don't get diseases, technology for medicine so that we can cure some diseases, for example. There's many uses for technology that can be used in nice ways that really are just for improving our comfort and our enjoyment. That's pretty much what all science is. It's for our enjoyment, make life easier for us, right? Make life more comfortable, make life more enjoyable. But that's all in the material plane. But that doesn't mean you can't enjoy. That's fine. You can be comfortable. You can enjoy hot showers. You can watch some television. It's not going to kill you. But just be aware that everything we do, everything we desire, all has an effect. So if you're seeking a material result for your own material desires and worldly pleasure, then that's what you're going to get more of. Whatever you put your mind onto, it gets energized and you become stronger. But the devotee of God naturally is thinking of ways in which he can serve God, in which he can please God. And if science, technology can be used in loving service, he'll do it. Why not? You don't have to reject it. There doesn't have to be this black and white wall. It's all about consciousness. That's what it's really about, your consciousness. Where is your mind at? What is it you want to do with it? Right? For example, we're doing this live video broadcast. We're using this technology because our desires here today is to glorify the Lord and purify our consciousness and increase our loving desire for the Spirit, etc. This is how we're using this technology here. Whereas some person on OnlyFans or doing some other naughty things with the internet, live broadcasting some lustful things, same technology that we're using, But the consciousness is different, and therefore also the result is different. The use made of things. Yes, thank y'all. Yeah. My head's not buried in the earth. I do know about these things. I may not use them, but I still know of them. I'm not entirely oblivious to the world. I may live in the boonies every now and then. Anywho, I hope that answers your question, brother.
Yeah, thank you. That was funny.
Huh? I don't think my innocent wife knows what that reference was, so let's keep it. You stay innocent, my love. God bless you. Unfortunately, these wicked boys, they know all about that. I'm just kidding. I'm messing with y'all. So anyone else have any other comments or questions? Did you think of something, love?
No, well, I don't know how to put it together, but for example, in Islam or Muslims, they see God as a superpower thing. This is on the sky somewhere, and it's an energy.
Right.
And if we talk about it, that God has a form and formless, masculine and feminine. We are not here to convince anybody to believe and change their belief, but if someone who is interested to hear about it, but still because his mindset or her mindset is how that person grew up with what he or she learned, but it still wants to learn about how God can be masculine and feminine, we should just say that our answer just is going to be because the scripture said.
Okay, well, for folks who are very much attached to the impersonal conception of God and have no knowledge of anything beyond that, and that's what it is. It's a lack of knowledge. That's what it is. So anyone who has a lack of knowledge of the personal aspect of God, and perhaps even an aversion to the concept, you don't have to bring that up. In fact, these are, somewhat advanced. That's why they're not taught in the Abrahamical scriptures, because time and place speak to the level of the listener. Yes, what Prophet Muhammad himself said, speak to the level of the listener. So you can teach very simple things. That your spirit soul, you're a servant of God. Chant the holy names.
No, my point was, if we are in somewhere that we are talking about this thing and there is some Muslims there with that belief.
What hypothetical situation would this be? You're somewhere talking about the personal form of God, like what, in public? And talking out loud and someone eavesdrops?
Group of friends.
And someone's eavesdropping on you?
No. We are in a group of people.
Oh, and one of your friends doesn't quite jive with that?
Yes.
Well, then just leave it. You don't have to push it. They don't need to, comprehend all these things. You keep things simple. Speak to the level of the listener. So that would be your duty. Use your intelligence. Understand your audience, who you're speaking to, what capacity they have for hearing. Because everyone's at different levels as how much they can hear. And for the most part, very few people can really actually hear the message of God. And that's why Mother Atasha, when she gave public classes, public programs, she spoke really on the basics. I mean, right now we're almost towards the end of the Religion of Love book. And now we're talking about personal form of God. Well, there's, 200 pages before that. Build your understanding a little bit, purify your heart and mind, and and even you might still not be ready for hearing about the personal form of God, but still it needs to be addressed. So it's in the book, but later in the book. So we keep it simple. Keep to the basics. I've heard Mother Natasha just hammer the basics again and again and again and again, even with us disciples. She would say the same teaching so that they would really ring loud and clear inside of us. So keep it simple. The first and foremost great teaching that you can impart, if one has any ability or interest to hear, is that you're not the body. You're a spirit soul. You're not this material body. You are eternal. And your occupational position is that of an eternal servant of God. That is who you are, servant of God. And to be free from suffering in this world is to quit serving our own desires and serving the Lord's desire. And the easiest way to come to such a state of being is through chanting the holy names, hearing and chanting and remembering. If you can get someone at least chanting, if they believe God is just this ethereal power, nothing more but light, energy, and that's their understanding, that's fine. They can at least chant the holy names with that understanding, that conception. That's fine. Chant the holy names, chant the holy names, chant the holy names. Gradually the heart will become purified. The dust from the mirror of the mind will be cleared. And they'll be able to hear more and more and more when they are ready. Because you don't hear with the ears, but with the heart. And you cleanse the heart through spiritual practices, through chanting, through devotee association. So if you can inspire someone to at least chant the holy names. Even in the Quran, it says that recitation of the holy name of God is more important than ritualistic prayer. So chant the holy names. The great ecstatic Sufi lovers of God, they chanted the holy names. That was their practice. So, I know, in Islam, it's many so-called Muslims, they don't believe in a personal form or in spiritual form at all. But, that's fine. Not everyone has knowledge of this. So, reach the level of the listener. At least be of loving service. Give up bad habits, sinful activities that are a detriment to serving the Lord in love, etc., etc. So be a little intelligent, a little wise, time and place, understand who you're speaking with. You can't give all this advanced knowledge to somebody, who hasn't got the basics down yet, right? Who hasn't even practicing any devotional service. Start from the beginning. Build the foundation first. Be example. Does that answer your question? No? Okay. I think Meat had some real life things that called his attention. He had to duck out. It's fine. How about you two, gentlemen? Anything y'all like to... Oh.
No, I'm pretty fine.
Okay. Good. All right.
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay. Aaron, I think you can't unmute. I guess your roommate's probably sleeping and you're very considerate. Right? I take it. You can also type if you have a question too, or comment. I have the ability to see the chat. Ha ha ha. Anything you'd like to type, brother? Nope. I guess we're good then. We can close there. All right. All glories to Mother Natasha. All glories to the religion of love. All glories to the assembled devotees. Jai. Jai, jai, jai.